Let me interpolate what that means. Planned Parenthood abortion clinics.
Teaching or accepting anything that remotely touches the critical race theory.
No one stood up a health department in Texas since the 1940s.
Welcome back to Blue Shark Show. And today what we're going to do is we're going to take a workshop that was held on June 16th and then a commissioner court that was held June 22nd and kind of mesh them together because it's all about one subject, the American Rescue Plan. And during the workshop, they had, of course, the commissioners, Jay Webster, Dr. Blocker. They had Dr. Becky from Department of State Health Services. So they had a wide range of individuals there to talk about the American Rescue Plan and the $5,986,700, let's just call it $6 million.
$6 million.
$6 million coming into the county. And on item number 3 of the Commissioner Court on the 22nd, they voted to accept that money, but not necessarily where they're going to use it yet, because there are several uses they can use it for.
Yeah, and reviewing the Treasury.gov website where it talks about the American Rescue Plan, it says that they can use it for COVID response, helping small businesses. And one of the things that I thought was very convenient here in Hood County is that they can use it for vital infrastructure, water, wastewater, sewer, all that good stuff.
And of course, right now we've got a huge crisis with, wastewater problems with the city. And I know they've talked about regional plants and things like that. Well, if the county can get $6 million for infrastructure, for wastewater, and the city gets a portion also, they can do an interlocal agreement and they can work on a regional facility.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's interesting that instead of tackling that problem, right now the conversation seems to be in putting that $6 million towards socialized medicine in Hood County.
Exactly. If you look at that special called workshop meeting, and I want to thank the judge, whoever called that workshop meeting, and he also stated there'll be more workshops on how you could possibly spend this money as the court, what is best for citizens of Hood County.
That we want to conduct workshops to fully understand any meanings or definitions or requirements to this money, to make sure that there's not anything that subjects this county to teaching or accepting anything that remotely touches the critical race theory or any of that propaganda.
So we want those workshop meetings. We were told last time for Tyler that we were going to have a workshop meeting by Commissioner Wilson, and we didn't have one.
Nope.
And he told Judge Gillum and some of the other citizens.
I think he said it in open court.
Right, and he put it on Facebook, but he never answered our question. And that's okay, Commissioner Wilson, if you don't want to answer, but we hope that the judge and maybe the other commissioners will have several workshops for this $6 million because this is going to be very important. Right off the bat, the special workshop was all about a health department, a health clinic, a health unit, whatever they wanted to name it, depending on the footprint. And you're talking about 3 people to 5 people to hire to put this clinic in place.
And that would be a government-run clinic, a county-run clinic for things like vaccines, things like care for different diseases and stuff that not everyone would be able to use.
Right.
And it really sounds like socialized medicine is what it sounds like.
It is the beginning, I think, of socialized medicine because right now you have your doctor, you have the emergency room, you have CVS that can give out, prescriptions and things like that, Walgreens, Walmart, various places. Ruth's Place, which is great, which they talked about a lot in this workshop. And I really think that places like that and churches and other things where people, if they're indigent, illegal aliens, things like that, if they're scared to come in, those are places where they can go instead of us starting socialized medicine here in Hood County.
Yeah, the fundamental flaw with having a county-run health clinic in the manner in which they're talking about here is that the government should have no role in administering health care. I mean, I believe anyways, and I think a lot of people believe that. I mean, we saw they started trying to do it with Obamacare back in 2008. You've got all the progressives on the left saying, you know, we need stuff just like this. We need government-run health care. I don't want it. I don't want any part of that.
And they talk in here in this workshop, and I think it's Dr. Blocker that brings it up, and Dr. Becky, and you know, and that's not the auditor. There's actually Dr. Becky Early Royer, and she's there speaking, and they haven't stood a health clinic up in these smaller communities since the 1940s or 50s.
No one stood up a health department in Texas since the 1940s. So kind of like none of us has ever faced COVID or an influenza pandemic like this before, none of us has stood up a health department either in our relative lifetimes.
And folks, there's a reason for that. What's going to happen, Nate, is the court takes the $6 million. Let's say they go ahead with a health clinic. They say clinic or unit, whatever the definition, terminology they want to use, and they get the $6 million. They staff it with 5 people. They have the office, they have the labs, they have the cold storage for vaccines. They do TB testing, they do STD testings, they do HIV testings. They end up doing juvenile testings, and some of that may be with or without parents' approval.
Yeah.
So this could really get into some issues, but let's say something hits the state next year or the next year and the funds go down. Who's going to be responsible for keeping this big footprint of a $6 million project up?
The taxpayers.
The county taxpayers will. And they'll be fitting the bill for it. And then we may have a new judge or some new commissioners that say, you know, this state's not giving us the money. That's an unfunded mandate. You know, because I hear that all the time. Well, this is an unfunded mandate. Well, who is here that is saying, I want a health clinic, I want a health department, and it's the county? Dr. Blocker, Jay Webster, the judge, Ron Cotton. So be careful what you wish for, because in a couple years, if the county has to start fitting the bill for this, it's not an unfunded mandate. This is because we had county commissioners and a judge vote for it.
That's absolutely right, and that's, you know, why it's important we watch stuff like this and be careful who we vote for going forward.
Right, and it's very important for everybody to watch this special workshop and listen to what is said about indigent care, about STDs, about HIV testing, about juvenile testing, and where this is headed. Because this is not heading in the direction that I think we should be going as far as socialized medicine. We have volunteers in place now, we have Roots Place, we have different organizations you can go to now, and we won't have to worry about that Planned Parenthood and all those other strings that are going to be attached with this.
And, you know, it's funny you say that. Family planning is mentioned in the American Rescue Plan Act, and, you know, I appreciate Dave Eagle bringing that up through the Commissioner's Court video. And, you know, one thing that Dr. Blocker said during the workshop, again, there's a workshop in the Commissioner's Court, during that workshop, he said, you know, well, the government has limited resources when it comes to providing health care. It's like, hey, buddy, there's a reason for that. The government shouldn't be doing this, period. I don't care if you have a guy, you call him a public health authority, like we do Dr. Blocker, which is a total misnomer there. But, you know, that is why I don't even like positions like that, because government only grows. If we plant this seed, it will only grow. It will only be a bigger burden on the taxpayers here. And those services, it's going to start with just, oh, we're going to do COVID testing and vaccines and this and that, and watch it grow over time, just like everything else the government gets into.
Right, and it was discussed, probably 80% of this meeting on the special workshop talked about COVID, the COVID response, the vaccinations, and it progressed. And actually, Hood County did a really good job at that, and Jay picked up the slack. He did a great job as, you know, he learned through this ordeal just like everybody else. Now the issue is, you know, with Jay Webster and the emergency management, you know, Jay had told last year Commissioner Eagle that 90% of his time was spent on COVID. Mm-hmm. Well, all that's kind of going by the wayside, and they're doing the vaccines, and a lot of the vaccines are already out for most people who want them.
Yeah.
So that 90% of his time is going to probably go down to about 10% of his time. So now, since the emergency management coordinator position is fairly new, what is going to take up that time?
You know, it's funny. There was a man that went to commissioner's court here a while back and said that if we keep going down this road with having an emergency management coordinator and some staff, we will find ourselves in a perpetual state of emergency. And I think that's what we're starting to see here. You know, when you take away COVID from his list of responsibilities, now he's got to find something to justify his salary and his existence on the government's payroll.
And the position's there, and there could be plenty of things that he could look at, emergency plans, things like that, that were lacking over the last 6 years.
Yeah.
So from 2015, they can work on emergency plans and things like that, but they can also get together the volunteers and everybody they had in place for COVID if this happens again, and they'll have a template on how to do it, because the money's going to be there from the federal government and the state, and it won't be because we don't have a health care clinic.
That's absolutely right. And you know, we may not have a building healthcare clinic, but we do have a $200,000 RV that they purchased. So
well, and
there's
you
that.
know, we did,
Yeah.
and they brought that up. Dr. Becky brought that up, and she said, you know, hey, what about a mobile command post? You know, and people kind of chuckled in there.
I'm not sure in the grant or not, does it allow a mobile unit?
Yes, because I'm making a recommendation down the road for
You know, as a newly
another
established
top.
unit,
Don't make me hurt.
whatever you want to call it,
Don't bring them in.
taking that
No, no,
mobile
don't
unit
touch
out to all of your smaller community.
And that's part of it. They could also do something like that and outfit that command post as a clinic. But, you know, you move from that workshop where they're talking about health clinics and 3 to 5 people to staff it and continually staff it. And then you have the vaccines and everything you're going to have to store, and it's going to continually grow and grow and grow.
Any acceptance of American Recovery Act money will obligate the receiver to implement critical race theory. And yes, you can say, well, the legislature already passed that can't be done in schools, but that doesn't mean it can't be pushed to county employees or to any business that the county determines is viable to accept this money from the county.
So then they get to the commissioner court meeting, and Nanette Samuelson comes up to speak, and once again, she's spot on. She talks about, you know, if there's any CRT, if there's any strings attached, if there's Planned Parenthood strings attached, then we don't want that money. She said she doesn't want that money going towards, you know, the county health care clinics. And I agree.
Yeah, you know, and I thought it was funny that the judge said, well, we need to look and see if there are strings attached. If the federal government is giving you money, there are strings attached. There's no getting around it. So, you know, I was very disappointed to hear the judge say that, because there's always strings.
If you go the healthcare clinic route with any of this money, you're looking at several strings attached. And, you know, Commissioner Eagle comes up and lines it all out in the code.
And first of all, on this American Recovery Plan, that's not really the correct name. It's called the American Rescue Plan of 2021. It's also HR House Bill 1319. I'm wondering who's read that. It's 259 pages, 8 pages just for the table of contents. It, in my opinion, is a grow the government boondoggle. Section 2501 talks about funding for public health, workforce, hire a bunch of new government workers to the tune of $7.7 billion. Section 2601, funding for community health centers. Let's go buy some brick and mortar and set up some clinics, $7.6 billion worth. 2601B1, track and trace and surveillance. 2601B2, track and trace and surveillance. 2605, Ms. Samuelson, funding for family planning, $50 million, refers you over to 42 USC 300, establish and operate family planning operations including natural family planning methods and services for adolescents that they don't tell the parents about. Let me interpolate what that means. Planned Parenthood abortion clinics.
And another thing in there was contact tracing, track and trace. They are going to use this American Rescue Plan to track and trace United States citizens. That is grossly un-American.
And that was the $300 million that our Texas Governor Greg Abbott wanted to use and not even call a special session for the legislature to come back, and he was just going to spend $300 million to track and trace.
Yeah.
And I was part of a lawsuit to stop him from doing that because it's not right.
No, and that's what they're going to try to do with this money here, and it's sad.
Another thing with Dr. Blocker and Jay Webster is I think one of the critical issues was there wasn't a doctor to sign for and step up and get the vaccine here to Hood County. And, it's a huge liability issue, right? Because it's really not tested, and it went through the fast track and everything.
One, no doctor in this community wanted to step up and be the doctor to order it. They point blank told us, we're not getting involved and we're not doing it. So therefore, there was no doctor.
The hospital wouldn't do it either.
There was no doctor.
Right.
Commissioner Cotton said the hospital didn't step up and sign for it. Dr. Blocker didn't sign for it. I guess he's not an authority as maybe hired by the city. He still can't do it, or for some reason he's not able to do it. So they had to finally, once they didn't find any doctors, they had to go to Texas EMS and have one of their doctors do it because they train, the volunteer fire departments and whatnot.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny to me that no one wanted to take the responsibility for that. The people in the know, the doctors and the administrators for local hospitals and stuff. It was hard to find somebody to take that responsibility. And, I think a lot of us are all about freedom and stuff. You're free to take a vaccine. I'm free to say no thanks, and maybe there's a reason that no one wanted to sign up to put their name on that.
That's a hurdle they were able to overcome by Texas EMS stepping up, the medical director. And, if we had a health clinic, it would work in conjunction with the hospital district. Mm-hmm. So maybe what Jay Webster and Dr. Blocker can do is get with the hospital district, because we have one here in Hood County, and say, if this happens again, we expect the hospital district to step up and take, control over this so we can get the vaccine here for the people that want it.
I think this is another prime example of when we see leftists wrap really bad projects into a pleasant sounding name and give everything a pleasant sounding name and then try to railroad it through, and people like Judge Massengill and Ron Cotton are foolish enough to fall for it. They call it the American Rescue Plan. You're against the American Rescue Plan?
How could you be, right?
Yeah, and family planning. You're against family planning? Well, when you look at what this stuff actually does, I think a lot of people, especially here in Hood County, will be very much against what Judge Massengill, Dr. Blocker, Jay Webster, and Ron Cotton are trying to do.
I think of course, there's going to be more workshops. And please, once again, folks, go back and listen to the workshop, listen to the Commissioner's Court, especially that workshop, because you get an idea of where Jay Webster, Dr. Blocker are going. I'm sure they mean well, but I don't think they understand the consequences that Hood County citizens will be facing if this comes about, and the reason, a clinic hasn't been stood up in 60 plus years, 70 years. And there's got to be an issue there too. So there's a lot of things they need to talk about. But if you look at a wastewater treatment plant, I don't see a whole lot of Planned Parenthood issues coming into that.
No, that's pretty cut and dry, and I don't like that this bill was passed, but if it is passed and if that money is already in the county's account and if we can use it on something like a wastewater treatment plant, why throw it at family planning, contact tracing, healthcare for legal, socialized medicine, all this crazy stuff? It's insane.
And so I think we need to make another turn away from this and get into the wastewater treatment plant that we so desperately need, and maybe, hook up with the city on how much money they're going to get from the rescue plan, of course, and talk with them and have another workshop and maybe go this route And, you know, we may still, the judge can still get his attorney general opinion and get with Matt Mills, county attorney. But when it comes down to it, folks, the churches, Ruth's Place, Cook's Children, you mentioned a lot of others, that's where we need to go. That's where the people need to go. The money for infrastructure needs to be spent here in Hood County on wastewater. We're in a crisis situation for the wastewater, and I know that's part of the city, but you put these two together, the county and the city, and we can have an ideal regional facility that will take Granbury into decades down the road.
Guys, as always, we thank you for tuning in to the Blue Shark Show. Be sure to like, share, subscribe this video, and head over to blueshark.media. There you will find the merchandise we have for sale. It helps support the show. We sell tumblers, t-shirts, and baseball caps.
Thank you once again for watching the Blue Shark Show. Blue Shark is here for you, the citizens, keeping an eye and shining the light on your elected and appointed officials. Shark Show out.